Welcome to Hot Takes on the Lake. I'm Josh, joined here by your host Nick, as always, and we are two lifelong Browns fans. And today we'll be talking about the Browns' upcoming game against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati, Deshaun Watson's second start. But first, we have to briefly talk about Deshaun Watson's first start, his Cleveland Browns debut this past Sunday, which Nick and I actually watched live on our YouTube channel. And we're going to be doing that again this upcoming Sunday for the Browns-Bengals game. So make sure to check us out on YouTube, Hot Takes of the Lake. Join us, watch the game live with us there. But as far as the Texans-Browns game, Nick, obviously we talked about it while we were watching it. But overall, for the debut of what could be our franchise quarterback, the game until the very end, really, and even at the very end, was just quite boring.
Yeah, I even mentioned it to you that I was like, I can't believe there's still like 7 or 8 minutes of this game left when it seems like the rest of the 1 o'clock games are already over, or at least about to be over. So this game just kind of it dragged on, and yeah, it was just kind of back and forth. Like nobody was really moving the ball at all. Especially the Houston Texans. They just looked completely. I mean, I'm surprised that they went away from the run game because that seemed to be they were gashing us early, which I'm really shocked that they went away from that just because the Browns just can't stop anybody when it comes to the run game. But for whatever reason, they did, and they tried to have Kyle Allen throw the ball 40 times, and it kind of you saw the results. So yeah, and no offensive touchdowns too. Got some on defense, on special teams, got a safety, and yeah, I mean, but it's just one of those games where you didn't really need it. It would have been nice for Deshaun Watson to get a touchdown or Nick Chubb to get a touchdown or two. But again, the offense wasn't moving, but the other sides of the ball, defense and special teams stepped up when they had to.
Yeah, and we questioned while watching, is this the highest scoring game without an offensive touchdown? And I did end up hearing later on in the day on Red Zone when I was watching the 4 o'clock window, he did say that it was the highest scoring game without an offensive touchdown since 1990. So I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. 27 points without an offensive touchdown is pretty nuts. And I think that's basically the two main things from this game to really take away: Deshaun Watson's performance and then our defensive performance, because our defense has been something we've been talking about all year, has been disappointing, not as good as it should be, and they were pretty good in the Buccaneers game last week, and now in this week having those turnovers and basically shutting down the Texans' offense except for a garbage time touchdown at the end of the game. So what did you think overall of our defense's performance, and do you think it's a good sign for the rest of the year, or do you think it's because of the competition we were playing?
Well, yeah, first off, like you said, against the Buccaneers, it was the same way. When they had to make a stop, they did, and it was the same way here. Like I said, the defensive touchdown, we got the safety, and then also that play by Grant Delpit on fourth and goal. Probably would have been a walk-in touchdown, but he was able to break up that pass and get a turnover on downs. Um, so I was happy with the defensive performance. Again, it's just kind of a mixed bag this year. Um, and you don't really know what what defense you're going to get. But like I said, the offense wasn't doing anything, but you still managed to score 27 points, and a big reason for that is the defense. So you have to give credit to them. Um, I think you have to take it with a little bit of grain of salt just because of how bad the Texans are. I mean, they really just reminded me of like the 1-31 era Browns, like just like a completely bad team. Maybe they have like a decent player here or there. I think Pierce is a good young running back. They might have a couple of other young decent players, but for the most part, any team that's worth its salt in this league should have no problem beating the Texans, and we did. So on one hand, yes, I am pleased that the defense came out there. And put on that type of performance. But at the same time, yes, it just was the Texans, so you can't read too much into it, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And then for the second part, Deshaun Watson, his debut as a Brown, no touchdowns thrown, one interception, which was a pretty bad interception. There's not a lot of defense for it. I mean, the offensive pass blocking on that play wasn't the best, but it was a pretty bad interception. 12 for 22 for 130 yards, was sacked once. Overall, not like super impressive. Also, not terrible, not worst case scenario. It was just kind of below average. And if our defense and special teams don't step up and we lose this game or win really close, I think that's a bigger conversation. But because of that team performance we had, his performance has kind of just faded into the background. So what if any thoughts did you have, a few days removed from that game of his performance? Is it something that does kind of scare you, or are you just kind of dismissing his rust and moving on to next week?
I mean, he was about as rusty as I thought he would be. I think clearly his footwork is an issue. Not getting his footwork right when he's in the pocket. I think that's why you saw a ton of his passes um, landing short, one hopping to guys. I think that's something honestly just not having played an NFL game in 2 years. I think that's just bound to happen. So obviously, I think with more games, that's going to improve. But you did see flashes of his mobility and his escapability in the pocket, especially that one play early on where he was, almost, dead to rights, and he was somehow able to get out of there. Um, but yeah, I think the Texans should have had a lot more sacks. I think he showed, yes, while Brissett this year has, I think, surprised a lot of us in his ability to get out of the pocket when there's pressure. Deshaun Watson is just a completely different animal. I mean, he can really get out of the pocket and then just kind of burn you all in the open field, just with his speed and his agility. So he showed flashes of his athleticism for sure. Again, I mean, the interception was a bad interception. I still don't really know like if that was just a wrong route by the receiver or Watson got confused. He expected him to go one way or whatever, but again, it's going to happen. I don't expect Deshaun Watson to never throw another interception again. I mean, and again, not playing that long, it's perfectly understandable for that to happen. Um, he did seem to get into kind of a better rhythm as the game went on. I'm surprised we didn't go deep more, honestly. I think you had mentioned that too while we were watching the game. It was a lot of short plays, kind of a lot of 5 yard slants or kind of in routes. No real shots deep, so it'll be interesting to see if he can connect with a guy like Peoples Jones or especially Amari Cooper downfield, because that's really gonna, you can get away not doing that against the Texans, but against like the Bengals this week, I don't think that's gonna slide. You're gonna have to push the ball a lot more. So from his perspective, it was about like I expected as far as the rust issues go, but I think again, just with the more games he plays, I think that's gonna eventually, just be less and less of a factor.
Yeah, and on that interception, I did watch a film breakdown of it, and from my understanding and what the person breaking it down said, the high safety, they were in a cover three, and the high safety did start to uh, bite onto the route that was going to the left side of the field, and because Watson was about to be sacked, he just kind of rushed it and just threw it, thinking that that receiver would be open, but that safety had not. He had gone like a half a step towards biting on that route. So when he threw the ball, the safety could clearly see where it was going and had plenty of time to get back, and that's why it looked like such an easy interception. So it was kind of, again, that's where it's like it looked really bad on TV, and it was pretty bad, but it was one of those things where it looked like he was rushing it because he was going to take the sack, and in that scenario, you just got to take the sack. Like, you can't act as if it's the game-winning touchdown last play of the game. It's not, so that's something that I heard about personally with Deshaun Watson, people talking about that was his big flaw, and I think that's what came up there. But overall, yeah, I think I'm just kind of ready to kind of clear the slate, say, okay, that's his game back. Hopefully that rust is knocked off, because I don't expect him to be going into this game against the Bengals and throwing the ball into the dirt 6 times. Hopefully he doesn't. If he does, that's worrisome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also starts with his offensive line. Again, I think the offensive line didn't have a great performance. Like I said, they only had one sack. But it could have been easily a lot more. Again, I think that was a lot of it just credit to Watson with his ability to get out of that out of trouble back there. But um, I think that's going to be crucial, just giving him time back there. And again, like you said, not rushing it when he does feel pressure. Because against a good team like the Bengals or a number of teams that we're still facing up on the upcoming schedule, they're really going to take advantage of it. Again, it's the Texans; they really couldn't, off that turnover. So it is what it is. But yeah, I think just giving him time back there and just letting him set his feet. I think that's the biggest thing for him is just getting his feet right because, if your feet aren't set, then it just throws everything off. So if they can give him some pressure or get him some time back there and just eliminate that pressure as much as they can, I think that's gonna do wonders for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And moving on to this game against the Bengals, we did beat them earlier in the year pretty handily, yet again, against the Bengals. Now, if my memory serves, I think Jamar Chase was injured by that time. I don't think they had him in the game against us, if I remember correctly. But he is back now. So Jamar Chase is, back and healthy now. And even though on paper, it's like, well, we've beaten the Bengals, I think, the last 5 games. And, even if you take out the ones where they were resting for the playoffs and stuff, I don't think Joe Burrow has ever beaten the Browns. But, on paper you can say that, but I don't know how much all of those narratives really play into reality. While we are mostly out of the playoff race, the Bengals are definitely not. They definitely need to win division games. They are tied with the Ravens at 8-4 for the division. They are not going to want to lose to the Browns at home. That's not going to help their chances to make the postseason or win the division for that matter. So they have stuff to play for absolutely in this game. What are your kind of initial expectations going into the game on Sunday?
Honestly, I wish I could be more positive, and it's just from. I think if we were still going for Jacoby Brissett, it would still be a tough game no matter what. Just because of the Bengals, I think what a 3-game winning streak, and besides that, I mean, beating the Chiefs for the third time in this calendar year again last week. I think that's just a shot of adrenaline to them because I think a lot of people, especially earlier in the year when they didn't get off to a hot start, were kind of saying, okay, maybe they were 1-year wonders or something like that, and they have that Super Bowl hangover. But they're clicking on all cylinders now. Joe Burrow is playing out of his mind. And even without Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine has been a great player for them in that backup role. And obviously, we talk ad nauseum about Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And their defense is fantastic as well. So both sides of the ball, they're really just, they're firing on all cylinders right now. They have a lot of momentum. So I think even if Brissett was in there still, it would be a tough game. And I'm just worried again with Watson only having his second game back. It's just a tough one. And I think, like you said, the Bengals absolutely have something to play for, despite the fact that they're tied for the division lead right now. Their division record is not great. I think it's 1-4. So I mean, this is a very crucial game for them if they want to get that top seed and win the division for sure.
Yeah, and going off what you said, they're actually on a 4-game winning streak. Their last loss
There you go.
was against us. So if we do beat them on Sunday, that'll be their last. They've only lost 2 of 6, and both losses would be to us. And their wins, at least the last couple of weeks, over the Titans and over the Chiefs, that's 2 quality teams. They're not just beating a whole bunch of bad teams. So they are, in my opinion, the best team in the division right now. I picked the Ravens to win the division this year at the beginning of the year, but I think I was incorrect. Even though they're tied, the Ravens do technically have the lead right now in the division. If I had to guess right now, I would see Bengals having more of a chance to take the division over Baltimore, even if it is only 1 game. Excuse me. So, yeah, I think it's going to be probably our most difficult game for the rest of the year because even next week against the Ravens, that you can make the argument for, we're at home at least there. So I think this will be our toughest game of the year, but I think that's high upside because if we do pull off a win this Sunday, I think that'll be excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll definitely be a feather in the cap for not just his team, but Deshaun Watson getting that second win under his belt and against a quality opponent like the Bengals. So we're definitely the underdog to say the least in this game. Again, I think it starts again. Just I feel like a broken record, but just with the running game, getting that established early. Um, Again, last week I don't really understand why Chubb didn't get more carries, at least in the first half. Um, Again, I know it didn't matter. We were still up 27-7 for the majority of that game. So in the end, yes, it didn't matter. You didn't need a monster performance out of Nick Chubb. But still, I think this is definitely a game where if you can control the time and just really pound away on the ground with Chubb and Hunt, get them involved, And then again, try to push the ball downfield with Cooper and Peoples Jones, because dinking and dunking your way down the field is not going to work against this defense. So getting the run game going, protecting Watson, I think that's a recipe for the Browns to have some success. But again, that offense is going to be tough to stop. I mean, it, we were lucky we played the 1-10 Texans last week, but this is going to be a completely different team. And again, you just don't know what the Browns defense is going to do. For some reason, they've showed up against the Bengals time and time again. But again, you can't expect to have that every single time you play them. And like I said, they're red hot right now. And it's a division game, so they have a lot to play for. I think they're pissed off that they lost, obviously, 4 or 5 weeks to go to us. So I think they're going to have a lot to play for, a lot on their minds. And I think defensively, it's going to be a tough one for us.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, that last game, they lost in primetime on Halloween, Monday Night Football. So that, again, not to like overplay these narratives or overstate them, but I'm sure that does play a little bit of a toll. You get to be on, prime time, Monday Night Football, and you lose to a divisional rival. Not fun. So yeah, they're going to play for it, but I don't want to also understate the Browns have stuff to play for too. We're not technically eliminated from the playoffs. Every game matters at this point. I'm sure that at least the players in the locker room are feeling that way, regardless of like the fan perspective. The players, if you're not eliminated from the playoffs, you think you got a chance, right? So they're going to be trying to win. And not to say this means too much for next year, but it really is kind of a test. Where is our team at? What players here can compete, and the coaches too. The Bengals are going to be a good team next year. Both them and us will lose some players, gain some new players, but we're still going to both be teams looking to make the playoffs next year. So with that being said, how do we look against them right now with our quarterback? I think that'll be important to see.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think it'll be a much better. I think it'll be a much better test next year once Watson gets through these next couple of games, gets a full off season, gets a full training camp. I think he'll be better prepared for sure. Again, but I wouldn't be shocked if he comes out with not looking the same as last week, but just not looking like Deshaun Watson quite yet. I wouldn't be surprised if he really doesn't for the remainder of this season. I don't think he'll be a bum, obviously, but I just don't think I don't think it's enough time to really get back to that level. Like I said, I think you look towards next year, the goal is absolutely making the playoffs. Like you said, adding players through free agency or the draft, obviously. Really hitting on those key spots like defensive line, shoring up the offensive line as well. Get another receiver, help out the secondary, the linebackers. There's still a lot of pieces that need fixing on this team. Maybe getting a new defensive coordinator, I think will work wonders. Maybe getting a new special teams coach as well. So I do think that this no matter what happens in this game, if we get blown out or something, I don't think it's I don't think it's the end of the world. I think you're going to see Deshaun Watson go up against Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and whoever is the quarterback in Pittsburgh for the foreseeable future. I think there'll be some good battles, but again, I think it's just, I think they'll just be hamstrung a little bit just because he's still. I mean, you're not going to get your feet under you after just one game, even if you did play a bad team. So I still expect some rust, but again, I think if we just stick to our bread and butter with the running game and our smart game plan and that from that perspective. I still think it can be a decent game and not be respectable, not get blown out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to be still going to be disappointed. Even if we lose close, who knows? I might even be more mad if we lose close, because then it's like you just win at that point. But it all depends on how the game goes. Sometimes when we have a really close game and lose with like a game-winning field goal from the other team, I can kind of accept that because it's like that's what happens in almost every NFL game, between good teams. But yeah, I think I'm just very excited to see Deshaun Watson play without this narrative of like, it's his first game back. How rusty is he going to be? What's it going to be like when he takes that first hit? It's like, all those kind of easy narratives that you get to put on any player coming back from a long break are gone. And there'll still be a little bit of the like, is he still rusty and that kind of thing, and first divisional game, all of those things. But overall, it's kind of like, okay, he's been on the field now. He played a game. Now we can just judge him as like a regular player, basically. I'm not going to really give him any more excuses or lifelines, when it comes to his performance. So if he goes out there and throws a bad interception, like it's going to be like, yeah, he threw a bad interception. No excuse of not playing for 2 years. And I'm also just excited to see the more development throughout the rest of the season between Watson and Nick Chubb. We saw a little bit of it with the RPOs in the first game. I'd like to see more of that because we talked about it on the live stream, but just imagine being a defense and having to defend an RPO with those two. That has to be one of the scariest, if not the scariest RPO duo in the league. I can't think of another one. Lamar Jackson is great, but I don't know if he has the running back to compare. So, yeah, I would love to see more of that.
Yeah, and they even ran that a few times during the game, and most of the time it didn't work out for a variety of reasons. But again, I think that's something to look forward to, and I think Kevin Stefanski is just going to be looking at his chops, as far as the possibilities and what he can do from that perspective of using his athleticism and his running ability. And like I said, I think I think the Texans should have had a lot more sacks than just one, because there were so many times where his offensive line didn't give him much time at all, but he was able to get out of the pocket, maybe not complete a pass downfield, but still not take a lot of sacks back there. So I think his athleticism is still there. Again, it's just from the passing game, getting his feet under him, and just getting used to throwing against a pro defense. Guys are so quick, and if you hesitate for half a second, a guy is there that might not have been there before. Just getting that timing down again, and I think he can. I don't see why not he can't be the player that he was 2 or 3 years ago when he was a bona fide top 5 quarterback in the league for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I don't expect that to happen this year. I think you look towards next year and the year after, where really he comes back to form again, getting players around him, getting help in certain aspects, and on the defensive side as well. But still, every game is getting him, more acclimated and getting him more experience. So I think, even though I don't have high hopes for this game, it's still, another opportunity for him just to get his feet back underneath him.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to talk about the receivers too, I mean, now I know he had Hopkins, in Houston for a little while, but now he has both Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones, which would I take either of those two over Hopkins? No. But they're both really good receivers. I mean, Watson's best play and his best throw last week was to Donovan Peoples-Jones, that 30-yard pass. And then we all know, Cooper doesn't need to prove to anyone how good he is. Everyone kind of accepts him as a, top 10 number 1 receiver. So then to know that we have this young receiver in DPJ is just very comforting, to know that you have both of them in case one of them is out for a game or whatever the case is, or just to have one on the field at all times. I do think we still need a few more receiver options for him going into next year. We'll talk about that later, but Anthony Schwartz now on injury reserve, so we're not going to be seeing him in there at all. Of course, you do have Njoku whenever he's healthy, and the GOAT, Harrison Bryant, but I still do think you need to bring in some more receivers, but that's an off-season discussion. Overall, I'm just going to be excited every game the rest of the year to just see how this team plays, and to be able, it's just going to be very interesting analysis. And I thought there'd be more meat on the bone, to talk about from that Texans game. It just unfortunately was kind of so bizarre. There really wasn't much offensively to talk about.
Yeah, and it wasn't even just a Browns problem. It was a Texans problem as well. Just we gave them plenty of opportunities to keep that game close, but every opportunity we gave them, they just would give it right back to us. Or just do nothing with it. And again, that's just they're a 1-10 team. So what do you really expect? But yeah, like I said, I think these next 6 or 7 games here, or however many games left.
5
I
games.
don't think anymore. 5 games. I think over these 5 games, it's unrealistic to expect Watson to return to form, like I said. And I think a lot of people are going to be upset about that, and I understand that with his contract, that, okay, we're paying this guy $250 million. Why isn't he not elite yet? It's like, okay, well, like I said, he's been out of the game for 2 years. Give him you know, these last couple of games to really, get his timing down, get his rhythm back, and everything like that. And again, a full off season, a full training camp, come back next year. Um, and I think, again, adding more weapons, and I think Kevin Stefanski can really open up the playbook a lot, and really, you know, really utilize the weapons that we have on this team. I think he was hamstrung. Brissett was obviously he exceeded all our expectations, but he's not an elite quarterback. Obviously, of course, it's been said to death. Baker Mayfield. I felt Kevin Stefanski was hamstringed by him because what could you really do with him? Because are you going to try to go deep? Well, he's not. He's not going to be accurate deep, throwing it deep at all. You can't run RPOs with Baker. He's not a great athlete from that respect. So I think having Watson, it's just going to open up this offense. And again, I think Kevin Stefanski might be coaching for his job next year. I think you at least have to give him 1 year of Deshaun Watson for sure. But, if it goes bad next year, I mean, I don't know if it's right to call for his job, but I think there's going to be some serious questions next year if we're looking at maybe sitting around 500 and haven't made that much improvement when you have a bona fide elite quarterback. So next year is going to be a big year. But again, this year I think is just focusing on keeping guys like Chubb healthy and Myles Garrett, adding guys in the offseason, just letting Deshaun Watson get some rhythm back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are all great points. So I have heard the narrative this week of like, oh, Stefanski didn't really open up the playbook in the last game because it's against the Texans and it was Deshaun's first game back. And I hope that's true. I mean, we did see some interesting play calling, but overall, I hope that's true. And I hope that this week he really does open it up and we get to see some more deep play and that type of stuff because it does make sense. You don't want to underestimate any NFL team, but when they're scoring, no touchdowns through the first three quarters, both of us, but specifically I'm talking about the Texans, you don't need to go that deep into your playbook. So with the Bengals coming out here, I'm going to be expecting them to score on almost every drive, that you are going to need to kind of expand that. So overall, it's just going to be a really exciting game to watch, and we will be watching it live on our YouTube channel, so make sure to come check that out with us, Hot Takes on the Lake on YouTube. And whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening on a podcast platform, make sure to subscribe so you can join us for all of our episodes. Nick, do you want to send us off?
I do, but first, Josh, do you have a score prediction for the Bengals game?
I tried to sneak by. You're going to make me do
You're not
it.
getting off that easy.
Damn. I mean, if I'm being realistic, yeah, I'm going to go 31-24 Bengals. Almost said Browns. But no, it's going to be, I'm going to go Bengals by a score, 7 points. And I hope it's close. I hope that it's maybe like it's a tie game and they score late, just for the hopefully to put Deshaun. I would love to see Deshaun in a situation, maybe not necessarily a 2-minute drill, but even just like a situation where late in the game it's still close and every time he gets the ball in the fourth quarter, he's trying to go out there and win it. That's what I want to see. If it ends up not being the case, that'll be disappointing, but I really can't predict the Browns win. They have to prove it to me still. So, yeah, I'll go 31-24 Bengals.
Fair. And just to piggyback off your point, I think it would be nice to see, even if it's like a 2-possession game, he comes down late in the game, gets us within like 7 points, and maybe we like don't get the onside kick or something, and then the Bengals just kneel out the clock. But at least something maybe to put us in position to win. I think would be massive for his confidence and just the confidence in the people and believing in him. So I unfortunately I'm going to pick the Bengals as well. I'm going to go 28-13. I think it might be a little closer just because whatever voodoo is hanging around the Browns Bengals whenever they've played the last like 8 or 9 times. I think might keep it close for most of the game. But again, I think just with Burrow and what a terror he's been on, I think they'll kind of put on the gas late and make it a 2-score win. So I'll go 28-13 Bengals, and we hope that isn't the case. But again, we're just going up against a tough team. So yeah, just hope it's a fun game. And like Josh said, we're gonna be live streaming it on our YouTube channel at Hot Takes on the Lake starting at 1:00. And yeah, just watch and get our commentary through the game. We love doing it. Love getting our real reactions as stuff happens, and hopefully it's a good one. But until then, We'll talk to you guys next time. As always, you can follow us on social media at Hot Takes on the Lake and on at Hot Takes at 216 on Twitter as well. I can't think of it right now. Like I said, Hot Takes on the Lake and everything else. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys later and go Browns.